Shattering Red, Chapter 14. Superstition. "Is this necessary?" Vita asked in response to his idea. It was simple, but not. Luck wanted to bring in a third person. He had downloaded multiple maps that were exhibited across the large interactive display he had built across the tabletop. He pointed to one that was a blueprint for a government building in the center of the city. "We have the smear video almost done. I hooked up those bots we captured and found stuff recorded that I won't make you watch. You can just see the final product at this point when it is played on every screen in the city. For me to access that, I need to get to the mainframe in this room. To do that, we either need a person on the inside or a way to sneak into that room." "Why can't we just use your insect things?" Vita volleyed. She really didn't want to get their personal selves involved as much as they could. He pulled up a list and handed it to her to read while he pointed to visuals he had pulled up from the social media accounts of employees who took pictures while they were working. There were clear glass panels that secured the room so anyone could go in, but they were airtight. The room was tightly sealed. The insects would be noticeable, if not for the void of their sonic frequencies, then from their touch. All that glass contains sensors taking in data. You can't just get by it. The area is too heavily monitored. You need someone there who belongs there, who wants to belong there, with more power than the average employee and little affection for the boss. Luck brought up a picture of a very short, very tan woman with a smile that must have been paid for. "This is Inez. I think she is our weak link." He brought up screenshots of things the Political had said publicly on her personal account. There were some memes making fun of Talbot. Vita didn't really think too much of it. You think, based off a bad joke that was likely her blowing off steam after a bad day, that she would possibly toss her whole career away? She squeaked at him, annoyed that he would risk so much to bring another person into their circle, especially with the last object on the list. "You have here a team that needs at minimum 3 people. Why?" She felt like this was the real reason he was pushing to try to get Inez on their deal. "It's better that way." He tried to pass it off, but she crossed her arms and glared at him, in no mood to play games. "Fine. I'm a bit superstitious when it comes to the number of people and doing a job. It needs to be 3, 5, or 7. Never 9. It's a bit of a holy number, and it's best not to abuse it on questionable services, but I don't think we will have 9 people on our team anytime soon. 3, on the other hand." They squabbled for a bit before Luck said he would do it himself and walked out. Vita was so upset, she decided to nap. Luck rounded a corner and found himself walking through what looked like marble pillars with giant lions balanced fiercely on balls, blooming with life. The rally was 5 nights away. They had time to get things done. He was very excited to get acquainted with this city. People here were a combination of polite and reactive, which was so much better than rude and reactive. There was a plaque on one of the pillars that explained the city's namesake. Aphthonia stood for abundance, and it was true to its name. He was so upset with what his people decided to do with the technology that he found he wanted to watch the seemingly happy people walk by. What this city had done seemed appropriate, but the more he watched the passing people, the more he noticed that joy never quite met their eyes, and the laughter he heard was short and pointed. As open as everyone seemed, they were hiding behind a mountain of emotional barricades. On most, when he really paid attention, it showed as a deep basal fear of everything going wrong. Everyone, down to the children, appeared on edge. They hurried from place to place. There was greenery with edible food everywhere, but it looked like there was almost no natural places within the walls for kids to run. He entered a coffee shop and noticed all eyes turned to him. Their eyes quickly returned to work. He wondered if he had missed something. Luck mentally noted to ask Vita about it later. Before he had made it to the front of the line, a woman was tucking her number into his back pocket. He got something cool to combat the hot wind that seemed to be accepted as natural here. He wandered down the street again. He was pleased to discover the sweet drink was incomparable to anything back at home. He pulled out his map, which showed that he was only a short walk away from where Inez worked. It was a Tuesday, and he knew, based on her social media flow, that she would be at work. Before he really even thought about it too much, he was standing outside the building that was gray at the base and tiered in rainbow plants to the top floor. Supposedly, she was on the 6th floor. He reached back and scratched his neck, his gut urging him into the offices. It was so busy inside, no one gave him a sideways glance. He just walked at an easy pace, as if he belonged there, moving around up to the back stairs, which took him to the next floor. Everything on the inside of the building was white with little chrome accents. He didn't feel like he could touch anything as he found the next stairway up. As he was going up to the next, he noticed Talbot going down to the floor he had just exited. They locked eyes and nodded as they passed. Luck swore there was almost a spark of recognition in the man's eyes before he smiled and waved, then disappeared on a lower floor as Luck pretended not to care, facing forward. Shit. That word was on repeat in his head until he reached Inez's office. Talbot might have had a glimpse of him when Faust died, or when they deactivated his robots in Cedalus, or it could just be his behavior as a politician. He couldn't help but feel he had just made an error in some way he couldn't just see yet. He pushed it far from his mind as he found the door labeled Talbot with Inez in smaller print below his name. He knocked. "Enter," a brusque female voice commanded. He did just that and saw a short, curvy woman in uniform with a matching envelope hat. The hat had 2 pins, which explained her station as the chief of staff for Talbot's command. She had to clip it around her tight bun to make it effective. Even though age was showing around her eyes and lips, she was a handsome woman. She didn't even bother to look up when he posted in front of her half-circled desk. Her monitor was secured to the ceiling and swiveled down on a light white mount, so she could move it with her as she walked and worked. Her desktop was also a screen, but it seemed more devoted to note-taking. She was responding to a message while watching a current debate about the new surrogacy center, which was heated. Luck had some chips that would allow him to access her computer remotely later without her knowing. He always carried some in his front pocket. They looked like clear, see-through circle stickers, half the size of his fingertip. He reached into his pocket and worked one halfway on a fingernail. He then reached up quickly and pretended to knock on the side of the monitor, leaving his near untraceable mark. "Hello? Anybody home?" he chided, to a pointed inspection and glare which softened at his gangly appearance. "You don't have a scheduled appointment, and campaign season is in full swing. Why are you here?" Inez asked, composed. Luck eased back a little more. Noticing the quick change in her demeanor, he decided to turn on the charm. "I've been sent from a different sector for some training." He exuded all his confidence in a flirtatious manner. "I'm supposedly not always following protocol, and they say they are tired of teaching someone as inept as me." Inez barely caught her eyeballs from rolling off her face as he blinked a little more often than normal. "It's almost election day, and they are sending me people to train?" She clenched a fist, closed her eyes tight, then visibly relaxed. She opened her eyes and smiled. Who was the supervisor who decided this? "It was basically a group decision," he answered, and bounced around rather loosely, emphasizing his hips with a fun little sway. "The last one said the other 2 agreed with their decision to send me your way." "What did you do?" she reprimanded. Luck was pleased to have her undivided attention. A bit of this, and that. He shoved his hands into his pants pockets and pretended to pout. He was about to put out a great lie when she gave him something to work with instead. "No, wait. You aren't Carl, are you?" she asked, almost looking worried. "Melinda told me that there was a new transfer that tripped on deck and toppled over and somehow dumped all that collected data for this campaign. Is that you?" she asked, now looking more concerned. He nodded, trying not to smile at the background just handed to him. "That's a bit of bad luck, isn't it?" She shook her head. "We were going to use those statistics in the upcoming rally. You keep this between you and me, and I might be able to get those statistics back if you give me access to the mainframe." "I've been doing some reading, and I think it's easy enough to do," Luck offered, thinking this couldn't have been easier. Inez viewed him speculatively, trying to decide what was best. It'll let me correct my mistake. I just need to know what the files were called, and I can get them back. Let me do this. Please. He reached out for one of her hands splayed out on the desk. Inez relaxed at his touch, obviously eager for more. Taking note of her blunder, she pulled her hand away and tucked it into her other hand before standing as tall as she could. If you can do that, you'll keep your position and will be forgotten, she said. I can lead you there now. He followed right to the room he and Vita had worried that would be so hard to enter. He tapped the side of the screen and left some of his sightless sensor stickers. With a few simple questions, he recovered the information from the survey sent out about feelings on the new surrogacy centers. He was able to see enough of the file to know it only seemed popular by a certain demographic. Men and women who had already had their quota of permissible kids. He handed the information over to Inez, who took him out of the room. He apologized profusely on behalf of Carl. She seemed overjoyed at the rectified issue. They shook hands and he left. She headed back in the direction of her office. Luck tried to get out of the building by looking as inconspicuous as possible, but failed. Talbot was waiting by the door and waved as Luck went by, wriggling his fat fingers. No words, just a toadish grin. Luck's stomach dropped. He was sure he had just been recognized by the menace that he met in the corner of the old man's eyes. He went out the front door, wound around a few streets, and turned on the camouflage portion of his jacket before making a beeline straight back to their living quarters. His heart was racing. Vita was napping on the couch, but woke when he burst through the door. I did it, he announced triumphantly, with a laugh. What did you do? She asked, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. I got eyes on the mainframe, Luck smiled warmly at her. We now have access to everything we need. Her mouth dropped. Oh, and if anyone asks, my name is currently Carl. Thanks so much for listening to Chapter 14 of Shattering Red. If you've liked what you've heard so far, please be sure to follow, like, and subscribe. If you would like to purchase the book, please look below for the Amazon link, although this is available on most major online book retailers. If you don't want to purchase the book, but would like to support me anyway, there is also a link to my Kofi site. Thanks so much. Take care.